Welcome, everybody. This is the Common Good Candidates podcast. I'm Robb Ryerse, the political director of Vote Common Good. So happy to have you with us on this podcast where we have conversations with the extraordinary, ordinary Americans who have done the crazy thing and decided to run for office, giving you the chance to get to know some of the really tremendous people that are running up and down your ballot. It's so easy to focus on the top of your ballot. Who's running for president? Who's running for vice president? Maybe the Senate or even the House of Representatives, maybe your governor. But when you begin to move down the ballot and you begin talking about state senate or city council or school board or House of Representatives in your state, you find that there are amazing people who want to do amazing work on behalf of people and represent them. And today we get to have a conversation with one of those people. Her name is Jennifer Lee. She is running for office in the great state of Texas in House District 55. And we'll talk about where that is and everything. But hey, Jennifer, how are you? Thanks for being with us.
Hey, Rob. Thank you so much. I am doing fantastic. Yeah.
That's
How are
great.
you? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Really my pleasure. Hey, let's begin with the end in mind. Um, it's November 6th. What have you accomplished? What are you proud of? How are you feeling?
First of all, I know that the first thing that will happen is I've probably taken at least two naps because I cannot wait for November 6th. But my hope is that I am getting ready to decorate my brand new office in the state capitol. Um, I know that my son already has a vision for what he wants that to look like at 7 years old. He will think of
Amazing.
it as his office. Um, I am hoping that I've brought my community together and that everybody in House District 55 sees me as a person that they can walk up, have a conversation with, and who will actually represent not just the people who donated to me, but for everyone who lives in this district, that they have real representation, that they have
Mm,
somebody that they know who's been involved, who will listen to them and absolutely be their advocate in Austin.
mm, that's great. Now, you're not a career politician. You're a mom. You're an educator. You haven't dedicated your whole life to running for office. How did you decide to get involved in this, and particularly, how did you decide that running for the Texas House was the right thing for you?
So one of the things that I realized is I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to legislation
Hmm.
because for so long as an educator, I didn't understand that most of the things that either I was frustrated with or some of the new changes that districts would go through repeatedly were all due to legislation. I had never thought about how much legislation actually dictates what our public education system looks like. And so when I kind of had that discovery, I think it was shortly before I had my son, maybe a little bit after, and just doing some digging and listening to some of the things that were coming down the pipeline from the extremism that was building at the time about 7 years ago. You know,
Hmm.
that was kind of a distant, like, these people over here seem a little concerning. Let's keep an eye on them. That's when we were at that point, and I started paying attention to legislation, especially education legislation. And I had a moment where I was showing a video about the history of education and talking about segregation, the civil rights movement, and how education has evolved over time. And I looked over and I had a student who had fallen asleep, and I woke him up, and he thought it was the news. He thought it was actually current day.
Oh,
And
wow.
he said, and I said, actually, that's like 50 years ago.
Hmm.
But then I had that moment where I said, that's kind of embarrassing that we haven't gotten very far.
Yeah.
If you can fall
Wow.
asleep and wake up and think we're just talking about the news right now.
Yeah.
And so that always stuck in my brain, and I started paying more attention to legislation, more attention to the political world around me. And then, actually, in December of last year, when my son was born, I knew that eventually I would run for office because I recognized that, yes, community activists can help make change, but change really is going to happen at a much higher level, and I need to be part of that higher level. And
Mhm.
so, in December, I started talking to some of my friends, and one of them just, said, why don't you just run now? What are you waiting on?
Hmm.
And I said, well, I don't, I mean, I have a 7-year old, I'm teaching, like, I feel like a whole bunch of ducks have to get into a row before I do this. And they just kind of said, oh, okay. And then the county commissioner called me within an hour. And
Yeah.
he said, so I hear you're running for House District 55. That's amazing. We were hoping somebody would, that step. And I said, excuse me? Who
I
told you
didn't think I had
this
said yes yet.
conversation? And he talked to me. He said, well, what's going to be so different in 2 years? What's going to be so
Mm,
different in 4 years? Go ahead and do it now. And I had been personally having kind of an internal conversation of, if you're tired of the way things are and
mm,
you really want something different, you have to do something different.
yeah.
And so I finally said, you know what? I guess this is going to be the something different. Like,
Yeah.
it's time. It's absolutely time.
Yeah.
And so I made that decision, and it was December 5th when I decided to run. The filing deadline was December 11th.
Mm.
And so teachers can get things done in a very short
Ah,
amount of time. I got my filing fee together. I got, all of the things that I needed to do to be able to even say, yes, I would like to do this. And I filed on December 9th.
oh, love
So I
it.
wanted to make sure I did it early just in case.
Oh, fantastic. So, what's it like running for office? Like, it's most people, I think democracy's better when as many kind of regular everyday people run for office as possible, and I have a real passion for that and helping kind of just regular folks run for office. um, People have like this idea in their head that it's going to be like something they see on a TV show, and I mean it's not like you imagine it is when you watch The West Wing, right? Like
No.
what's it been like for you? What's day to day? What's a normal day look like for a candidate for the Texas House of Representatives District 55?
So first of all, there is no normal day. um,
Mm,
because I started in the middle of a school year, it was a lot more challenging
mhm,
because I wasn't able to, and this was after, cold and flu season. So I'd already used up a significant number of my sick days.
mm,
So I wasn't readily available to go to meetings during the day. Everything always had to be, usually about after 5 o'clock. Um, Being a teacher is not the most conducive to running for office because even if people are like, oh, well, you get out at 3:30 so we can have a meeting at 4:20. And it's like,
oh,
that is so cute, that is
yeah.
precious, that's what you think teaching is like. It is not. And so, I would say I'm not even available until 5:30. And don't forget, I have a whole child who still wants a parent. And
Mm,
so it's been, every day I start out, making phone calls. We're,
mm,
of course, having to do quite a bit of block walking now. But now that I'm available during the day, I'm meeting with community leaders. I'm going to all the different meetings that happen during the day. I'm still going to lots of meetings in the evenings. My son is with me for most everything that I do. Partly because it's important for me to show him what that's like and
mm,
have him meet those people and learn how to interact with other people and network and just learn those skills early on, because it's never too early to start kind of raising them and leading them in that direction of kind of becoming community leaders. But I've already had a couple of meetings this morning. My meeting started at about 8:30 this morning, and so I've been going for a while.
yeah.
I've already had numerous conversations with, campaign manager, campaign staff.
Mm.
I was up until about 2 o'clock this morning working on social media posts, working on endorsement things. So there's
Yep.
always something to do, and it's one thing, and it's something you have to really learn how to balance it out.
Mm.
Otherwise, it could easily consume all 24 hours in a
Yes.
day. But
Yep.
one of the best
Any
parts has been interacting with those community leaders.
for sure. Anything surprise you? Anything like, oh, I just never expected this. Like this just kind of blows my mind.
Um, I think it's interesting when it's little things like when I'll see a piece of my literature around town, I see my face somewhere
Mm.
randomly, or
Yeah.
someone will recognize me, and I'm just walking through the store, and someone's like, "Oh, you're Jennifer Lee, aren't you?" And it's kind of like, "Yes." Um, I'm not
Yeah.
sure. How do you know? Where
Yeah.
did you see me? How did you hear about me?
That's right.
But I think it's just a lot of seeing my image somewhere or having people recognize me. It's something that you kind of have to get used to. It's what you want, obviously.
Mm.
You want everyone to know who you are, but it's kind of an
Yes.
interesting thing when it starts to happen, or when I walk into a room and people say, "Oh, I've heard so much about your race, and I know, all the numbers, and they've done their research about you." The fact that you can be Googled and researched is it's an
Yes.
interesting thing.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. So, we talk about, you were talking to us about how you got interested in policy and the difference that legislation makes. And I think you're absolutely right. I say here in Arkansas, like what happens in Arkansas doesn't stay in Arkansas. And our state legislatures all over the country are laboratories for bad ideas. And those bad ideas through the court system often become law for the entire country when we didn't even ask for it. And stuff gets tested one place and then passed on to another state, and another state. So, you know, state legislature really matters. And some of the issues where it really matters are we've seen that state legislatures are really the hotbed for Christian nationalism, and
Mhm.
this idea that we've got to take America over, and impose our religious preferences on everybody else, and give Christianity a preferential treatment. I'm curious about the ways that you've seen Christian nationalism and that particular brand of extremism rise up in the Texas legislature.
So, one of the first, I think, instances where I noticed it was particularly centering around like the anti CRT sentiment and
Mm.
being very anti woke, so to speak, and noticing how that rhetoric, of course, I've heard things during Pride Month and whatnot, but when people started talking about um, feeling uncomfortable with some of the way that history was starting to be taught, feeling uncomfortable with talking to children about different family types, talking
Mm.
about just for me, everyday normal things, and hearing them cast kind of in a bad light was deeply concerning. And that was kind of one of the first rumbles of, I think something starting, and we need to pay attention to the people who have an issue with anti-racism. If
Yeah.
you're taking issue with being not racist, what are you? But we're not allowed to call you the thing that I think you might be. So, that's just an
Yeah.
interesting. I don't know what you want us to call you then.
Yeah.
But that was one of the first times where I actually helped organize a rally because there was a specific piece of legislation. I think it was House Bill 2979, where they were going back through and talking about how do we teach history.
Mm.
and the word, romanticism and romanticized history was coming into play. And specifically, it talked about, you know, the US being a Christian nation and that needed to be taught, but editing out figures of color, editing out women in history. And there was a rendition of that particular bill that was supposed to denounce white supremacy, and the Republican legislators purposefully advocated to have that part removed. They wanted
Mm.
the sentiment that white supremacy was wrong. They wanted that taken out, in addition
Wow.
to the black figures that were supposed to be taught in schools and females. And it was just an interesting kind of, well, we can't just, force people to say that white supremacy is wrong. That's
Wow.
weird. That's a very weird thing. What do you mean we can't just say
Yeah.
that out loud and it makes people uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Maybe it should, but
Right.
also history makes people uncomfortable, so we shouldn't teach the parts that make
Yeah.
people uncomfortable.
Mm.
If you're looking at history and you're like, yeah, that looks great all the time, that looks great, then that might be a problem and you might
Yeah.
want to reconsider that.
Yeah.
But that's when I first started to notice that. That was around 2020, I
Mm.
think.
Yeah.
And that's also when I started hearing about book banning and things like
Mm.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you bring that educator's mentality to things of like, I'm not going to be scared of information. Information isn't anything to fear. That helps us connect the dots and make better decisions. And, if this is the way things were, like, there's no reason to sugarcoat it, right? Like, yeah,
Exactly. And
yeah.
I think that's been one of the big things is that um, they don't want really people making those connections. And that's something I've always done, even when I was a student, was
Mm.
I would notice how things built upon each other.
Mm.
And so when I started making those little connections and this extreme, it was bad, you would be labeled a terrible person if you were so called woke. And that very specific anti woke ideology. And I thought, you know what? They want us asleep so we can't see what they're doing.
Mm.
Too many people started connecting dots, and that's why they branded, oh, if you're paying attention, that's bad. Stop it.
Yeah, yeah,
And so a lot of people did, and I think that's part of how we got to where we are now is so many people don't know what's going on because they didn't want to be canceled. They
yeah,
didn't want people to be coming for them, so they kind of stopped paying attention.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Now, as a one of the issues that comes up a lot, and we've done a lot of our work at Vote Common Good related to immigration. And, there is a sense now where it feels like every state in the union is a border state. um, every state in the union is grappling with immigration. And, it's been a controversial issue in Texas. And, y'all are kind of like on the front line of this. I'm curious what your take is on how do we treat people at the border? What's the role of how we interact with these human beings who are seeking entrance into our country, and what can be done at a state legislative level for a state like Texas that has such a large shares so much of its border with Mexico.
So I think you kind of mentioned it just there in remembering that these are human beings.
Hmm.
And we have to remember that, it's so dangerous to attempt to cross the border in the multitudes of ways that people are doing so. And, especially when you're trying to do it with small children,
Hmm.
knowing the dangers that are ahead of you, knowing that, you're going through miles of desert, it's going to be hot, you're going to be dehydrated, there's razor wire, there's dogs, there's all kinds of things meant to deter you from coming in through any other means than one of our, approved ports. Looking at it from that perspective, somebody just risked their life for, weeks, days, you don't know how long. obviously what they're running from is so much more terrifying than what
Mm.
they're about to go through.
Yep.
You have to have compassion for that to bring, I mean, just sometimes walking around with my 7-year old, just kind of normally around town, a trip to the grocery store can be taxing with a small child. I cannot fathom weeks on going through a desert
Yeah.
with a toddler.
Yeah.
So obviously, the thing that I am running from is far more terrifying,
Yes.
far more dangerous than spending weeks in the desert trying to get to freedom and safety.
Mm.
And so I think legislatively, we have got to create a boundary of, first of all, we have to treat people humanely. And
Mhm.
right now, I feel like there's that quote from Governor Abbott where he says, he's talking about the only reason why he's not shooting them is because he would be sued. That is disgusting and vile. And that's
Mm.
coming from the governor of the
Yeah.
state. The only reason we wouldn't shoot them is because of that. That is unacceptable. And so having in place the protections of they have to be treated humanely. We cannot be separating families. That is also a vile and disgusting practice of separating the families. Yes, we have to make sure the children are safe and we have to make sure they're taken care of.
Yep.
But there are ways to do that where we're not separating infants from their mothers.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
having protections in place and making the path to citizenship clearer and something that can be done a lot more quickly.
Mm.
Because
Mm.
so many of these people are coming here because they just want to make a better life.
Yeah.
They're not trying to do anything wild, crazy, or anything else. They literally just want a better life for themselves and their family. And
Yeah.
for the time being, America is still the place to make that happen for them and to do it
Yeah.
safely. So we
Yeah.
have to honor that fact that they just did all of that work just to get here. We're not better than them just because we happen to be born here and they happen to be born over there. That doesn't make us better.
Yeah.
We're human beings. We're all human beings.
Mm. Oh man, Jennifer, just listening to you talk, whether it was, on any of these issues, you just bring such a common sense, level headed approach that we absolutely need in every level of elected office. So let me ask you this. A little bit lighter note. When people think about Texas, they think about all sorts of things. And Texas has kind of a big reputation, right? And I think, when people think Texas geographically, they can picture it in their head. They think about Dallas, they think about Houston, San Antonio, Austin. They think about the cities, but that's not all that's there, right? Tell us about your district. It's north of Austin, south of Waco. Tell us about this little slice of Texas and what's wonderful about this area.
I grew up in Northeast Texas, about an hour west of Shreveport, Louisiana. So I grew up in
Hmm.
deep piney woods, East Texas. And the culture moving west towards where District 55 is, I went to Baylor and Waco, and then I came down and moved to Temple, which is part of District 55 about 13 years ago. 55 is I love that it's so close to Austin so that you can have kind of the Austin experience and have the fun that you can have down there, but you can also travel up to Waco. It's not far from Dallas. 55 is Temple, Belton, Nolanville, Harker Heights, and a portion of Killeen, thanks to gerrymandering, a portion of Killeen.
Mhm.
And each town is different, little bit country, little bit city. They all feel like big small towns,
Hmm.
which is so much fun because the growth is just exploding in the area, and it's grown by at least 20% in the last couple of years, and lots of young families are coming in. It's a lot of fun. It's one of those things, there's always something to do every weekend. My schedule is just insanely crowded with events in each one of the cities. every single Saturday, I'm at an event in each city within 55. And the way that I do that is, I mean, they're all along just a couple of roads. And so it's just you hop on I-35 and then you can go from Temple to Belton. And then you get on I-14 and you go from Belton to Nolanville to Harker Heights. And you just kind of, you can go straight through District 55 very easily. It's compact, but also has some kind of more rural areas,
Yeah.
and there's also extreme growth and a city feel for each one of the areas, but they're
Yeah.
all so exceptionally different. It's a lot of fun. I did a
Yeah.
Christmas card in December shortly after I decided to run, where in about a 2.5 hour period, I took one of my former students. We started in Temple. We went to the city of Temple's Christmas tree. I took a picture there. I had an outfit on with the Temple High School colors. We drove down the road. We went to Belton. I did an outfit change in the parking lot. The Belton High School colors. We took a picture with there in front of the courthouse there. I drove to Nolanville, changed into the Nolanville colors, and Nolanville is so tiny it did not actually have a Christmas tree. So I just stood next to some Christmas decorations downtown. And then I did the same thing for Harker Heights. I did the same thing for Killeen. Each city got their own outfit change, but I was able to do that in a 2.5 hour span
Yeah.
and get a picture and make a collage, and bam, there
Yep.
was the 55 Christmas card. So it's
Yeah.
small, but also big. And I love it so much.
Yeah. That's great. Folks get a little sense of what it's like to run for office. You're driving around the countryside, changing your clothes in the back seat of the car. Yeah.
In parking lots
So
trying to say, okay,
yeah.
now what color is the high school here?
Yeah.
What color
Yeah.
do they do here?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to
Yeah.
find the earrings to go with which one here. Yeah.
Mm. So, Jennifer, we ask voters to use the common good as their voting criteria, and we ask people who are running for office to use the common good as their governing criteria if they're elected. It's not about a policy platform where everybody agrees on every single issue. It's much more like a shared set of values. And I'm curious, when you hear a phrase like common good, when you think about how you might want to use that idea in your leadership in the Texas legislature, what comes to mind? What resonates with you?
When I think of common good, I honestly think of civil rights and people
Mm,
being able to be heard and be seen regardless of what they may personally believe, regardless of what policy affiliation they may or party affiliation they may have. Something that is different about my race is that well, actually, I think this whole election cycle really isn't so much about party as it is about what do we actually all believe. And many people care a lot about public education. We all believe that education should be free and available, and it is the means of freedom and um, an equitable sort of society.
mm,
And so, looking for things that benefit everybody, regardless of what they may go home and personally believe, wanting to make sure that everybody has a right to be seen and heard, and that we genuinely attempt to restore our democracy. One of the other reasons I decided to run was because there wasn't going to be another choice.
mm,
We were just going to have MAGA extremism, and that's it. And for me, that's unethical. It's unethical to I couldn't imagine going to the ballot box and knowing that I have someone who is so diametrically opposed to democracy and freedom, and that's it. There's nobody else.
mm,
To me, that's wildly unethical. That's unacceptable. And I just hate that if I hadn't run, that's where we would be. And I can't stand the idea of my friends and neighbors having nobody that would care about them, genuinely care about
yeah.
who they are as people and what their struggle is like. And so recognizing everyone's humanity, we have to get back to realizing that our friends and neighbors might believe differently than us, but we're all people. We have to restore humanity to every person.
Mm,
It's become way too commonplace to be like an us versus them or
mm,
to other somebody else. We're human beings.
yeah.
We all need food, we all need water, we all need shelter. We all need protection, and we all need to be able to move about freely in this society and feel like we matter. And at the end of the day, we all matter.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to start acting like all of us matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hmm. How do you stay positive in the midst of all of this?
I keep saying to myself that because I'm walking on a lot of faith right now,
Mm,
a whole lot of faith. I believe that I'm doing the thing that I'm supposed to be doing. And I have to believe that I'm able to do the thing I'm supposed to be doing for a reason.
mm,
Not to mention, I have an incredibly cute 7-year-old who just, when I watch him watch me up on stage giving a speech, or when I hear somebody ask him what he thought about his mom's speech, and I just hear him say, "She's amazing."
mm,
And so I can't help but know that regardless of what happens in November, a tiny little human being is super proud of me, and
mm,
he's watching and he's learning, and he's
mm.
actually a much better politician than I am. Much, much better. He walks up, he talks to everyone. He can tell you to vote for me. He can explain so many things. He's gotten to meet so many people, but just knowing that for a minute, the people that I've met, the people that live like me, we all have a hope that we actually might be able to do this.
Mm.
I'm doing the thing I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Jennifer, how can people find you? And how can they help?
I can be relatively easily found, but hopefully not confused with the creator of Frozen, who is also named Jennifer Lee, because that has come up more than once. But they can find me at Jennifer and the number 4Texas.com. My Facebook page is the more active of the social medias. I'm working on Instagram. I'm not gonna lie, I might have forgotten that I had an Instagram page for a minute. But the Facebook page is the one where I usually do the lives. I'm kind of that millennial who just loves Facebook. But that would be, like, follow, share all of the socials because you get to see all the weekend antics.
Mm,
And then also, going to the actblue.com and searching for Jennifer Lee. I believe there's only one Jennifer Lee when you actually search in Act Blue, and donate because my opponent has already over $1 million. I mean,
oh,
she's supported by our governor. She's supported by the billionaires that we hear about who support school choice. I'm a teacher and a single mom. I don't
yeah.
have the same resources that she does.
Yep.
I just
Yep.
have a lot of people who really want to finally be heard.
Yep. Ah, wonderful. Well, thank you, Jennifer, for sharing your story with us. Thank you for running for office, and encourage people to head to Jennifer's website and smash that donate button and help support this. I mean, a common sense, no nonsense educator. Boy, it feels like the Texas legislature needs that. Needs you, Jennifer. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Rob. And thank you for highlighting just the need for common sense. We got to bring that back.
Yeah,
It's not even
for
about
sure.
party anymore. It's just about common sense.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for listening and being a part of this conversation with Jennifer Lee, candidate for Texas House of Representatives. Conversations like this are happening every Wednesday between now and Election Day, right here on the Vote Common Good podcast network. I don't even know if that's a thing. But you can learn more about Jennifer and all of the other candidates for common good by visiting candidatesforcommongood.com. Thanks